All right, Amina. What are the key elements that you would change if you were completely rewriting how we think about ambition and success, starting from scratch? What is the old paradigm? What is the new paradigm that you're proposing?
I love this. And I think that the evolution of the paradigm, honestly, is a conversation of unconscious bias because ambition is one of those culturally complex, politically loaded words that either highlights our benefits or our drawbacks, depending on who we're talking about, right? So ambitious women are often seen as too much, while ambitious men, that's sort of table stakes. And if you're a person of color or with a disability or a queer person, right, we have all types of ideas about what ambition gets to look like and for whom. And so I'd start by saying, and this is what I say in the book, is that ambition is neutral and natural. It is for everyone. And I define it simply as a desire for growth, a desire for more life specifically, which I love because I'm always like, I'm here for the aliveness, you know? And so it's literally just this desire to unfold. So it can't be right for some people and wrong for others. And though I think ambition's neutral and natural, I think that we have two orientations of it, which I call painful ambition, which is driven by our core wounds. And then there's purposeful ambition, which is connected to our truth and comes from a place of wholeness. And so, again, if I'm rewriting things, we're all skipping over those core wounds and we're going straight to the purposeful ambition piece.
What are the top 2 to 3 core wounds that are most common that you see expressed?
So there are 5 core wounds, and this is a body of work from a Canadian psychologist named Lise Bourbeau, and they are rejection, abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, and injustice. And I'll back up for a second because for people that haven't heard the phrase core wound, I'm sure most people have spent their time in therapy like I have, and we're like, oh, we got it. But for those that don't know, a core wound is an initial injury of the psyche. And they happen in our formative years, and it is just a very human rite of passage. You could literally have the most gorgeous parents on the planet, and you will still have a core wound, at least one, just because we all get them. And even if it doesn't happen in your family system, it could happen on the playground or even vicariously from watching somebody have an experience.
Oh.
So there are these 5 wounds. And then here's the rub, though. For each wound, we wear a corresponding mask. So we talked about the 5 wounds. And so if you have an abandonment wound, the mask you wear is dependence, where you're overly emotionally reliant on the people closest to you. And this is interesting because for the high achievers, it doesn't show up in the work context, but more so in our relationships outside of work.
Oh, interesting.
And then if you have a rejection wound, which is one of mine, one of the masks you wear is avoidance or withdrawal. So you'll avoid conflict or you'll avoid throwing your hat in the ring because you don't want to be rejected again. And you and I just, before we hit record, we're talking about a little cute little rejection I got this morning. Um, then there is, this is another one of mine, betrayal. So this is when you felt like your caregivers didn't live up to expectations. And then the mask we wear is control. Then there is humiliation, which is when we feel like our caregivers are embarrassed of us in some way. And the mask we wear is masochism or martyrdom. And then the last one is injustice, when we felt like our individuality in childhood was restrained in some way. And then the mask that we wear is rigidity or perfectionism, where we have this intolerance for living in an imperfect world.
So I'm curious about, with those 5 core wounds, the connection to enoughness of like using success and ambition and achievement and accomplishment as like a general mask for kind of stuffing the holes that we feel in ourselves. How does that manifest? What does this look like?
Exactly what you're alluding to, right? When we have a hole on the inside, whether that's rejection, abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, or injustice, we often seek the thing on the outside, thinking, oh, that's the way that I'll fill the hole. But it never works that way, right? You can have all the shiny objects on the outside. And this is my story. I'm sure it's the story of a lot of people listening, right? You can have all of the titles, accolades, achievements. But if you don't do the work on the inside, you're just going to keep chasing. It's an insatiable desire because the work isn't outside of us, it's inside of us.
All right. Well, I'm going to actually just read a whole bunch of things from your book because I probably highlighted more words in your book than are unhighlighted at this point because like every single sentence I was just like, yes. But here we go. Late stage capitalism taught me to derive my value, my self-worth, and identity from perpetually competing through jobs and by gathering achievements. I felt like my work wasn't just a job, but my whole personality. Like deep breath. I felt that in my bones. And if someone has built their entire identity around their work, how do you begin to divorce that? And where do people derive their self-worth, if not from, in fact, their work?
I feel like you've got some wisdom for us on this too, so I want to hear what you think. But this is some of the foundational work that I do with clients. So I think that identity is a prism, like a crystal, right? It has many points and many facets. And what we do is, especially in the culture that we live in here in the West, right? There's such an emphasis on what we produce and what we achieve and what our titles and jobs are. So we over identify with that piece. We over create that identity and we underdevelop the other parts of ourselves. So first and foremost, I ask my clients, well, like, what are the other aspects of self, right? Of true self, of wise self? Okay, I'm a sister, I'm a mother, I'm an artist, I'm a peacekeeper, I'm a leader, I'm a truth teller, right? What are these other aspects of yourself? And then we look at how deeply are you on the court with those aspects of yourself, right? And it's kind of really hard to look at that at first because for the most part, we're like, I'm not on the court with those other pieces at all, right? Like a part of me identifies as a creative, and that's such an untapped part for so long. And
Mhm.
so there can be this moment of shame and it can feel existential in lots of ways. And then we just bit by bit see how we could turn the volume up on those other areas. And it requires that we borrow some time from the other places that we've over identified, namely work, right? And that's a negotiation in and of itself. But it's really important work to do because inevitably that we're going to experience identity loss around work, right? We're going to reach the top of the mountain and it's not going to feel good. We're going to lose our job. Our business will fall. Something will happen, right? You and I have stories like that. And then who are we after that?
So we co-hosted a dinner with a bunch of delightfully ambitious, wonderful humans in New York. And one of the conversations we had was around as you are tiptoeing into more purposeful ambition and really leveraging your full self, really doing the work that you want to be doing. A lot of us talked about the need to slow down a bit.
Mm.
And there's this like, I want to do good work in the world and it feels important. And can I scale and grow? And like, there's just this constant tension between what is the old paradigm, just perpetually going, 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 but the work feels important. How do you navigate the need to slow down and rest and repair and nurture and cultivate with the need to continually make progress on the things that you want to bring to life in the world?
Love this question. So, first of all, I think that ambition goes in cycles. So, we live in a world that tells us that ambition is more for more sake all the time, right? Always move the goalpost, always get the next thing, right? Oh, Megan, you launched a book this year. Where's the next book, right?
Yep.
Without you taking a beat. I'm sure you have gotten a lot of that question, as have I. And I'm looking at people cross eyed, being like, are you kidding? Like, I just birthed this. Um, so I think that ambition actually goes in cycles. And like a perennial flower. That's the analogy that I've been using. It's like you drop a seed in the ground, right? You have this desire to grow. And then you water that seed, you nurture the inner and outer environment, and then you have this beautiful peak moment, right? So your book comes out, my book comes out. Like, what a top of the mountain moment. And then the seasons change and the petals fall off and we wind down and we go back underground. And maybe that ground is fallow, right? Which is partly where I feel like I am right now before we are nourished enough that we can rise again. And we're always in that relationship throughout our life and in different areas, right? So this could be like a peak moment for motherhood, but an underground moment for work. We're kind of in these cycles in lots of places. And then the other thing that I think about is both resting in micro ways or taking care of ourselves in micro ways and macro ways, right? A lot of the times, I think on social media, especially, we glamorize like, well, I quit my job and I took 3 months off when I traveled Southeast Asia. And that's just not available to most people, right? I haven't had one of those moments yet, but I would love to. And so I just think of, well, what are the micro ways, right? So today, can I go and sit in the park and look at the leaves, right? That's so nourishing to my nervous system. Or first thing in the morning, can I get sun on my face for circadian rhythm? Can I make sure that I actually take my weekends? Can I make sure that I actually shut down at 6 o'clock? What are the small ways in addition to the big ways that we can take care of ourselves?
Mm. When you're attempting to evolve into a new way of being, I have some beliefs when you're talking about just resting. Like, I've gotten really good at barriers. I don't work nights and weekends. I have my weekends. And then I have these moments on the weekends where I'm like sitting down and I'm reading a book for 15 minutes. And then I'm like, ugh, should I like do the laundry? I need to take care of something. I still have a lot of guilt. And I've been so frustrated, but also trying to just honor the process of some of the beliefs that
Mhm.
just stick into us and we carry forward into a new way of being. I'm curious for you, what are some of these sticky beliefs that you've had a really hard time shedding?
Yeah, I love this. And, we do live in a world that equates our worth with our productivity, right? So if I'm resting, I'm not producing. If I'm not producing, I'm not valuable. And I think that's something that we really need to culturally rewrite too, because I think, like, what if we just came to planet Earth to be weird and wonderful? And, like, why can't that be enough, right? Like, why do I actually, and, you and I are entrepreneurs as well. And I think there's so much conversation in the entrepreneurial space of like, well, build another thing and
Yeah.
then do more. And I'm just like, I'm so tired just watching you do that. I can't do it myself. Um, but I would say some beliefs that I'm still rewiring. It's interesting because I always hesitate to use the word heal, like I've healed this thing. Because what I've noticed in my own life and with my clients is that every next level of becoming, like every step we take on the staircase, is the wounds tap us on the shoulder, but in slightly different ways, right? Maybe it's not as loud, as dramatic, or as painful, but it's still there in some ways. Like I have done so much work to reform my perfectionism, like so much work because it is feedback I have gotten for a long time. And, just with the book coming out and there being more eyeballs on my work, I just felt it come up so huge for me. And then went down this whole rabbit hole of exploring my attachment trauma and doing more parts work and all the things and seeing why it was there and why it was getting so loud. But that's something that I'm constantly rumbling with, like, especially as a woman of color. The stakes are different, the standards are different, right? It's like we're told to fail fast and often in entrepreneurship, but we see certain identities held to different standards. And so I've really struggled with and have internalized a lot of that narrative about how I have to show up.
Mm.
Like my first job, I have curly hair. And my first job, I went to work one day with my hair curly, and my manager was like, "No, like you cannot come in with your hair like that." And then I watched them also shame somebody else that came in with their hair natural, and so I was just like, "Oh my god, like, you're not even allowed to have a hair out of place isn't even the right word, right?" Nowadays, I blow out my hair just because I've had a whole journey with hair loss. It's another story, but I just from the beginning was kind of conditioned of, like, you have to show up this way, and what we know, both from my book and just, like, being women in the world is that there's so much bias in these standards of professionalism, and then we weaponize them against ourselves, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
What about you?
So, what's the question?
What are the things that the sticky beliefs that we're still unwinding?
Yeah, I still have the like rest is not available to me. Like, oh, I'll like apologize to my husband who's like, stop apologizing for just sitting on the deck and enjoying the sunshine for a bit on the weekends. And like, I just, the like constant productivity I still have, I think, well, as this like goes into our next question. So you asked, we have a author's call and you asked last week, like, how are you all feeling about your career? And I believe all of us like hysterically burst into laughter. And
Yes.
that there's some of my belief there. I still have some identity wrapped up in my career.
Mhm.
Like I spoke, the reason I was in New York and we had this dinner was because I was speaking at Fordham University and they asked me to put my title on the name tag and I'm not the CEO of something right now. I'm just, quote, just an author. And I was like, oh, like I feel like people aren't going to take me as seriously in this room. So I still have some like identity issues around how my current status is viewed and what it means about how people are going to receive me. Like, and it's
So
insane.
wild. Yeah, they are very sticky.
Yeah.
And everyone's beliefs are so different, right? There's people that are like, "Oh my god, author is like the highest level of achievement," right?
I did a book talk at the Boulder Bookstore. It's the only book talk I did, but the Boulder Bookstore is an institution. And I got there early and my family was going to come after me. So I was by myself when I arrived. And there's a couple coming out and my book is in the window. And I was like, can you take a picture of me with my book? And the guy was from Germany and he just started crying. And he was like, you're living a dream
Oh
that
my
I have aspired to my entire life, but I know I will never achieve. And I was
god.
like, 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 and like, and I was totally just like, can you take a little picture? Like, no big deal. Headed into the bookstore. This feels like small potatoes to me. And to remember that, like, whatever it is, your story is someone else's, just like beyond their imagination. It's like, anyway,
I'm so glad you had that moment. That is unbelievably special.
yeah, it was rad.
Unbelievably.
And then I started my book talk crying because I was like, I'm living a dream.
Look at you
Anyway,
now.
so to this, like, you ask about our careers, and all of us burst into laughter
Yeah.
because I will speak for myself. There's some, let's call it ambiguity. Like, I'm figuring things out. I piecemeal things together. I got some speaking and consulting and the thing, but I wouldn't call it steady at this point.
Mhm.
And it makes me laugh when people ask me about it because it feels very hard and crunchy sometimes. And sometimes I'm like, oh, this is fabulous. So the question being, when you are working toward a new way of being in the world, it is not easy and it is not particularly comfortable. How do you hold yourself accountable to like this new place you want to go and this new way you want to be in the world in the moments when you don't particularly feel comfortable?
Mm, that's such a great question. I love it. And like, I know what I would say to my clients, and I wonder if I doubt I have navigated these moments with as much grace. I think that the messy middle is called the messy middle for a reason, right? It's like we're figuring it out, we're trialing and erroring, we're having a hard time with the discomfort of not having the shiny wrapped bow and label, right? That's speaking for myself. Like those, I do not thrive in ambiguity. I like to have it neat and tidy, recovering perfectionist. Um, I think that it's really important to say the thing and to take the shame out of it, right? So,
Oh,
scientists actually have a way of measuring the vibration of certain emotions, and shame is the lowest vibration. So it gets in our way and intercepts what we actually want. And so, if we're carrying shame about our work, our identity, people will read it. They won't know why, right? Something will feel off. They won't exactly be able to put their finger on it. And so, I'm a big proponent of when I'm feeling shame, I'm like, how can I out myself on this, right? It's not a fun thing for me to do, but I'm going to do it. And so, like, I'll tell my friends, I'll tell my sisters, I'll put it on social. I encourage my clients to really say the thing. So, for example, oftentimes maybe they have a nonlinear career path and they're like, well, I'm not the typical hire for this role, right? I've been an entrepreneur my whole life and now I'm going into corporate. And they're like, they're gonna have this pushback. I'm like, say the thing from the beginning. Tell them, right? Hey, you're probably expecting, a more traditional hire for this role, but let me tell you exactly why my experience is standout here, right? So, like, saying the thing is so powerful because we take the shame out of it and we get to own the narrative. And I think that's one of the most important parts.
yes. Oh, this goes to one of the questions that I have. Da, 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 da. Another quote from you. The more we tap into our authentic reason for being, the more chance we have of transforming the systems and structures that repress us and limit our potential. Say more.
Note too, going back to scientists measuring the vibration of emotions, actually the highest vibration isn't love, which is what a lot of people think. It's actually authenticity. And so then going back to this authenticity conversation, right? If we are unabashedly ourselves, then the opportunities that are at that same level will be able to find us, right? But if we've watered ourselves down, we're complicit in a system and the opportunities that we really desire aren't going to find us, right? So I was talking to you before we hit record of how I was asked to interview at this illustrious firm about an executive coaching opportunity. And I was like, cool, let me go see, let me explore. But it actually the requirement was to not be myself, right?
Yeah.
To they literally said, "Hey, we're not interested in people that want to dismantle the system. We want people that will work with the quote unquote nuance of the system." And that I should have exited stage left
Yep.
and
Peace.
exactly, exactly. And I was very honest about who I am and what I value and what I stand for. But there's definitely a small part of me that wanted to be chosen for sure. But if I had chosen something like that, I would miss everything that is meant for me. It's a form of hiding.
Yeah. How do we particularly think about authenticity? So I like there's a lot of like conflating it with just like showing up wearing whatever you want. What is your like here is what authenticity is?
I have to say, so having gone down the rabbit hole around my perfectionism, particularly in the last year, I've done a lot of internal family systems work. and it's kind of changed my life. Like, I feel like before I saw the world in 2D and now I see it in 3D. So have you ever done internal family
No,
systems?
I'm like, "Say more, tell me all about
Okay,
it."
so check out this book called No Bad Parts. It's like a great starting point for it. So in a lot of ways, we think that people have one mind, right? I am this way in totality. But in internal family systems, they talk about how we have many parts, and sometimes these parts collude and work together to protect us or what have you. So, and then we also have our true self, our wise self, that is like the unabashed, unadulterated, non wounded part of us, right? But I have this controlling part, I have a perfectionistic part, I have a judgmental part, and then I have, true and wise self in the midst of all of that. So when I think of authenticity, I think of true, wise self. I think of peeling off all of the layers of programming, all of the wounding. And then once we've done that, what are we left with, right? The true essence. And I think it's so cool to do this internal family systems work because you can see all the parts. And it's interesting because sometimes we have these parts where we're like, oh, no, no, that's real me, right? I have this spiritual part, right? The spiritual part is actually just a righteous part pretending to be real you. So it's really fun to kind of pull off the layers and see the different masks and personas and what we're left with when we take them away.
Oh, another quote from you about systems of oppression. You talk about attempting to outwork the systems of oppression working against us. What does this mean?
Yeah. Well, I think that so many of us think we can outwork a broken system, right? If I'm just smart enough, hardworking enough, the most model minority, I will shine. I'll outwork this broken system. But there is no outworking a broken system, especially one that wasn't designed with you in mind. It's literally a fool's errand that keeps us in a trap, right? This is the essence of the ambition trap. And I think the more we're aware of that and the more we find other ways of contributing and bringing forth our sacred contribution, the healthier we will be.
Mm. Something that we discussed at the dinner and that I can't stop thinking about is when we're talking about purposeful ambition.
Mhm,
And a lot of us think about our one true purpose. And there's this concept of the North Star.
mhm,
And one, there's a lot of shame about like, if you don't know what your purpose is, like you're going to feel lost and all the things. You discussed a concept of moving from a North Star to a constellation. And this like broke my brain because I have always really identified my purpose with my work. I like there's success and self-worth and all the things, but I've always done very purpose-driven work. And so it feels like the biggest and most wonderful expression of my purpose has been through my career. And when we were talking about this as a constellation and the different parts of us, recognizing the big and small and multifaceted and multidimensional ways that purpose can manifest through us
mhm,
as a mom or a community member or a friend or like all of the different areas of our life.
mhm,
So, talk about the North Star to the constellation
mhm.
and how that has shown up for you as you've been teasing this out in your own life.
Yes, I love this. And I can't take credit for this. So the constellation of purpose comes from my friend Michael Ventura, but I just thought it was so brilliant that
Thank you,
I had
Michael.
to quote him and include him in the book. And so it's the idea that, so many of us think we have this one North Star that we have to work toward, right? I want to be XYZ. I want to be this author. I want to be this CEO, whatever it is, right? But it is so rigid, right? And we have no idea because it's 1,000 steps away from us, right? So my friend Megan Hellerer, who's also a coach, um, talks about living directionally versus destinationally. And so if we live directionally, we're basing it on the North Star, right? I want to be the CEO. I don't know why, I just want to. But if we're living destinationally, we take one step at a time. And every step clarifies the next step, right? And if we couple that with the constellation of purpose, I'm not aiming for this one star. I've got a couple of brightly burning stars in my universe that together make up a whole ecosystem. And I'm operating inside of the ecosystem, which is a lot more agile, a lot more flowy than the rigidity of this one North Star. And I love this because I I feel like I'm always changing, I'm always evolving, and I've really struggled with doing this one thing. Like I'm such a millennial, like I'm the elder millennial that I'm like such a multi hyphenate, you know? And so this idea of constellation really suited me because I could never fit myself in the box and I never wanted to. And so, thinking about like for me, I really do think that my work on planet Earth right now is helping people come home to themselves, right? So pulling off the layers of programming, whether that's the core wounds or the stories we told ourselves about our careers, and coming back to the essence of who we are, and then being like, well, what do I want to contribute from that essence? And I don't just do that in my career, I do that with my friendships. Like I sit with my sisters and I do that. I talk to somebody on the bus and I'm doing that, right? Every question is kind of an invitation to come home to ourselves. And I think that's a way cooler way to be in the experience versus, oh, it's just in my 9 to 5, right? It's woven. It's like these grand threads of our fate that are woven through all parts of our lives. But can I ask that question of you?
For me, I think one of the things that I've been really focused on purpose, passion, quality of life, and passion being where's my curiosity taking me, like constant learning, constant growing, different experiences. And those two things have really driven me, but the quality of life aspect, I didn't quite understand like how that fit in until it all blew up and I fell apart. But when I started thinking about quality of life as a way to manifest my purpose as my highest and best self, because it allows me to show up intentionally, all of a sudden the quality of life aspects of like cultivating my own joy, having deep and profound, meaningful social connections with people that I love, my mental and physical health, like the things that feel like nice to do, not like have to do, which are actually, in fact, the most important things to do. It helped me just be like, oh, that is in fact purposeful to
Yeah.
be able to show up. Like this morning, I woke up in a great mood and was like having a dance party with my two kids before
Oh,
school.
okay.
And I was just like imagining like this feels intentional, like, this is a purposeful moment because I'm showing up as my highest and best right now, and I'm showing them a different way that a mom can be, and I'm starting their day off well, and, like, it comes down to micro moments
Yes.
that constellation visualization really helped me be like, "It can all feel purposeful. It isn't just the one thing," and that was really helpful.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
so beautifully said. And how wonderful that your kids get to see that role modeled, like a
Oh my
happy, purposeful mom.
Dude, I tell you, I'm so happy I had kids late because I would have destroyed them had I had them before. Like, whoa. But like that's I don't know. Anyway, maturing,
Would have
getting
left
all
them on
things.
a bus somewhere.
Oh my God. Especially the little one. All right. Oh, this was a good one that I've what does ambition look like when it's rooted in self-trust rather than self-correction?
I mean, I think that's purposeful ambition, right? And purposeful ambition, I talk about how, it's not black and white either or thinking, it's really growth mindset. It's not instrumentalizing our bodies to get to the goal, which was my story, right? It's actually being really kind to our bodies and to everybody else's, right? Working in a generative way versus an exploitative way. It's really collaborative. It's not about shining as an individual. It's not about my need to win. It's about my desire to contribute to a better world. And just you can kind of see in the contrast of how much more generative and nourishing that way is.
Yeah. Marrying that answer with your previous answer, the like day-to-day interactions. This is a half-baked question, but so often the first thing we ask someone is, what do you do?
Mhm.
So in terms of our just the day-to-day practices that we can even begin tiptoeing in to transform the system, what are some ways of conversation starters or the little day-to-day things that you do with your language or questions that you ask when you're getting to know people that help people come home to themselves?
Oh my gosh, I was at this workshop a couple of months ago and they invited us to introduce ourselves as as the descendants of our grandparents and the descendants of our parents. So I introduced myself like, "Hi, I'm the daughter of Ingrid and Bakir. I am the granddaughter of Muhammad Ali and Naima and Olive and Walter." And like that in and of itself cracked people. Oh, people were bawling, right? Of like, I am the descendant of these beautiful humans. And, like, also, I have a complicated relationship with some of my relatives too, but that's also true, right? That's part of my truth. That's part of my experience. That's part of my who I am. And it was a really powerful thing to do, and I loved it so much. I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to do this."
So is that something that you have brought like, do you ask strangers this?
I haven't yet, but I'm leading a workshop in a couple of months, and that was literally I was like, "We're gonna open with this." It's so good, right?
Oh,
Isn't that
I love that.
special?
Yes.
Can you introduce yourself that way? I wanna see how
Oh
you
my
feel.
gosh. Cindy and Larry French, and the descendant of my grandparents, Joe and Viola, and Jack and Josephine. What comes up for me there is one, perseverance. And like when you presence those names,
Mhm.
there's war, there's immigration, there's so many things that people have had to go through. And then great grandparents, I'm like, Zora, I think. And it puts into the just impermanence of we're just this like little flash in the pan, and we're here for a little bit, and we may not be remembered multiple generations down the line. Like, it helps me stay present in a way.
I love what you're saying, right? Like, yes, it's a flash. Everybody is a universe, right? Every life is a universe, and also it's a flash in the pan. It is both things, and it's so wild to think of it that way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
very similarly, like of each of these people were a universe. Each of these people were a world, and we are sort of we're the descendants of those worlds. And I think it's really um, it's so massive to think about that and all the lives that they had to live and what they had to overcome for us to be here.
Yeah. Oh,
It really makes me forget about what I do for a living.
I know. Well, one question I have.
Mm.
A lot of high achievers I know are so busy on like the hamster wheel of all of the success and achievement and all the things that taking the time to actually pause and slow down and consider the questions that you invite people to talk about feels really hard. What are like the first little steps people can do when they're feeling overwhelmed?
You know, I always say that one of my friends is a nervous system teacher, and we volley back and forth on this because, I think sometimes clarity comes on the meditation cushion, but I think a lot of the time clarity comes in motion, really.
Mm.
And so you don't have to, backpack through Southeast Asia like we were alluding to before, or completely pause, right? A lot of the time, clarity comes in motion, like from taking an action. And so I always think, again, we just have to go one step at a time. And what I notice actually about a lot of the people that I'm working with these days is that we're actually in a state of freeze. And so taking any kind of action feels really hard. And so I try to break it down to the minimal viable. What is the smallest decision and action that we could take today that is going to clarify one single thing for us? Not everything, because if we try to clarify the whole purpose of the whole universe, we will just stop before we get started. So, what's the minimal viable and what is the smallest thing that I could do today or in the next 5 minutes that will just clear one thing up for me?
I love that. So I'm curious about you've been thinking about ambition for quite some time now.
Yeah, yeah.
What is exciting you right now? Are you still real lit up by the material that you've been working with for so long, or is there additional things that are catching your curiosity?
I gotta be honest, I worked really hard on the book, as I know you did too, and I feel proud of it. And I had a podcast recording earlier this morning, and so I was rereading some parts of the book, and I was like, "This is pretty good."
Oh, God.
You take yourself out of it after a while. Like, first of all, you read it so many times that you have it memorized, and then you can't see the forest for the trees. And then I haven't read it in a year, and I'm like, "Oh, this ain't bad." So that part is always funny. And I have to tell you, every astrology reading that I have had, from Western astrology to Vedic astrology, ambition is exalted. It's very big in my chart. And so, in lots of ways, when I would tell them, "Oh, I'm actually writing a book on ambition," they were like, "Perfect person to write a book on ambition." So I think I will be a student of it for a long time because I think there's more to learn, and I'm always kind of getting lessons around it. But I did allude to one thing that was really interesting me when we had our dinner. I've been very interested in what it means, and you are deeply studied in this and did this work for such a long time, and so I'm so lucky to sit with you and to get to learn from you. But I'm really interested in what ethical entrepreneurship looks like just because I've seen such a lack of ethics in the space and I've seen a lot of harm replicated. And, I'm kind of proud of how I haven't had meteoric success because I'm like, I didn't use those harmful tactics that I was looking at, being like, is that all right to do?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I want to stay small. Like, it's not one or the other for me, but I want to figure out a way to grow that is generative. And I think it's connected to ambition, but it's taking the conversation a little further into some different areas of like, how can we grow in a way that brings everybody along, doesn't hurt people or the planet, and is kind?
I should ask, besides going out and buying the incredible book that I've read
Mm.
twice now, where do people find you? How can people support you, work with you, all the things?
Thank you so much for asking. You can get the book, The Ambition Trap: How to Stop Chasing and Start Living, everywhere you buy books, whether that's your favorite indie bookstore or a national chain. And you can learn more about me on my website, AminaAlTai.com, or Instagram at Amina AlTai. I'm sure the spelling will be in the show notes.
Yes, yes, yes.
And if you're interested in coaching or inviting me to speak, please drop me a message.